Hello, I'm Ann Gritch, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this segment of the oral history of the Diocese of San Jose. And with me today is Father Warwick James, who is the pastor of St. Simon Parish. In fact, we are here at St. Simon. So, Warwick, welcome to your parish.
Well, thanks very much, Ann. Thank you. Thank you.
So, can you give us a little bit about your background? You are one who was not born and raised in the Archdiocese of San Francisco.
Correct. No, my background. I basically grew up in a, I'd say, middle-class family in South Africa, obviously. Got all my elementary and high school education and my first degree back in South Africa before going to the seminary, which was at St. John Vianney Seminary in Pretoria. It was also known as the National Seminary, which was basically staffed by Franciscans, OFMs, Irish Franciscans. There was one South African that was on the staff, Bonaventure, and spent 7 years at the seminary in South Africa. Background. Was ordained in 1980, one day before Jose Rubio and Kevin Joyce. So I have a little edge on them, I guess.
Senior to them, yes.
Yeah, 11th of April, I think they were ordained the 12th of April, 1980.
And your ordaining bishop was?
My ordaining bishop was the great and marvelous and amazing theologian, leader, Dennis Eugene Hurley, by the grace of God. And of course, a big light in the life of the church.
Absolutely.
And also the country. So I spent my first couple of years, my first assignment was, my first few assignments were, I was kind of a fill-in priest, because in the Archdiocese, I don't know if they still have that these days, every 5 years, a priest would get a 3-month vacation.
Oh my.
A policy I'd like to see starting in this diocese. A little late for me now, though,
but for your younger brothers.
I kind of filled in at various parishes initially, and then also, then I was, well, as a deacon, I was immersed in the Valley of 1,000 Hills among the Zulu people so that I could learn to speak Zulu and preach in Zulu, and which I did. And then I had various mission assignments, which was among the, well, African, both white and black Africans in South Africa. So I had a number of assignments, and then my first pastorate was at St. Catherine's in a place called Queensborough in the Archdiocese, and I was there for, I think, 3 years, when I thought that it was probably time for me to get some further studying done, and since there wasn't a Catholic university in the country at the time,
wow.
I had heard about Santa Clara University, and Father Robert Mackay, in fact, was the one who suggested that I take a look at San Jose as a diocese, because one of the issues was Archbishop Hurley said he would let me go if I could support myself financially and all the rest of it. And so, and also the political situation in South Africa was not a happy one. It was, apartheid was rife, and it was difficult. So I came to look, I saw, and then I was conquered, I suppose. I remember Bishop Pierre Dumaine making me an offer, as I like to say, that I chose not to refuse. So I don't know if that's enough about my background.
So that was 1988. So did you finish at Santa Clara?
I did. I was at St. Mary's, and then I just had to, St. Mary's was my first assignment in the Diocese of San Jose.
And the pastor was?
Speed Hoffman.
Oh, yes.
Arthur Wendell Hoffman, by the grace of God. And Burns was there, Michael Burns was there as the other associate. They were with me for 7 months, 8 months, because the following June, Speed retired, and Burns was assigned, I believe, to St. William's.
I think that's right.
And so the new incoming pastor was Dennis Brown, and It was a glorious couple of years. I always said that those who were before us had certainly prepared the soil and everything, and it was like a second honeymoon, really, that assignment. Of course, I had big shoes to fill because I succeeded Tom Betancourt. And he was very popular in the parish, extraordinarily popular, a total extrovert, of course, which I'm not, but very much loved, and the people embraced me, and even though I showed up in a cassock and things like that, which were kind
But I think it was a white cassock, as I recall.
I had a white one, a grey one, and a black one, because that's what we wore back at home in South
And I
Africa.
remember you're calling the bishop your grace.
No, my lord.
My lord.
Your grace is reserved for an archbishop.
Oh,
My lord
I
is a
see.
bishop.
My lord is the bishop. Of
And Bishop Dumaine absolutely loved and enjoyed it. He used to say, "Gentlemen, please note." But I think Bishop Dumaine was a bit of an Anglophile, you know. So. Yeah.
So from St. Mary's.
St. Mary's, I was appointed as parochial vicar to St. Lawrence with Father Tony Mancuso, who was appointed at the same time as pastor. Tony was, I think, going through a little personal stuff, and after about 10 weeks, he thought that he should maybe take a leave, and so I immediately, funny enough, the very next day, John Sandersfeld was the vicar for clergy. Upon inquiry among the people of God and the bishop and whatever, and your pastor, I hereby appoint you administrator of St. Lawrence. And interestingly enough, the same thing happened just before the following Chrism Mass, which is when I was incarnated into the diocese. I got a letter from Bishop Dumaine saying, having consulted with your pastor and the people of God and the personnel board, I'm very happy to welcome you into the diocese on Tuesday night at the Chrism Mass. Well, of course, I went into an absolute tailspin because I figured, hang on, have you cleared this with my ordinary back in South Africa? Of course, it was before the days of email and internet and all the rest of it. So furious faxes going back and forth, and so I was incarnated that Chrism Mass in 1991, I think.
I remember that Chrism Mass because I was still in the worship office at the time. And I do remember that time we would divide up the Eucharistic prayer, which we don't do anymore, by languages. And I remember you spoke your part in Zulu.
Because Father Basil Royston was the other priest who was being incarnated.
That's right. Also a South African.
Also a South African, and he chose to speak Afrikaans, which, so I did. I'm quite sure the clergy must have thought, what planet has this boy come from?
No, it was very fun because my chair was very close to where all of the fathers were, and there was this whole, what's that? Zulu, 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 Zulu. And they went all the way down, so everybody knew that it was Zulu.
Yes, that's right. That's correct.
Other stories when you first came, just in terms of adjusting and different terminology?
Well, yes, and I still find I do it. I guess I've never worked at trying to lose or to gain an accent. But sometimes I find if I'm praying with the people, the Lamb of God, by way of example, at daily Mass, I have had to start saying, grant us peace rather than grant us peace, because it gels and jars in my own ears. Some of the other adjustments that I had to make, well, back in South Africa, we certainly didn't have the kind of pastoral staffs that you have in parishes here. That was a fairly large adjustment.
Just having lay staff.
Well, having so many. I mean, we had, my parish back in South Africa, St. Catherine's, we had one paid staff person, and that was, and I guess the housekeeper as well, so, because they lived on the property. But that was it. The rest were all volunteers. Your catechists were volunteers. Father and the secretary did everything.
Yes. That's the church I grew up in, too. Sure.
So it was quite different having these well-trained, well-educated lay people in positions of leadership, which was encouraging, very encouraging. Yeah. So that was a slight adjustment, not a difficult one, a happy one actually. Of course, I had the great joy of working with people like Sister Frances Allen, now of happy memory, Nikki Thomas at the school. She came in the July, I came in the November, just at Mary's School. And having parish schools was not something that I was accustomed to. We don't have parish schools in South Africa at all, no.
That must have. So then you get to St. Lawrence, where there are 3 schools.
Well, no, 2. I built the 3rd one.
Oh, did you?
Well, what happened was at St. Lawrence, it was kindergarten through 6th grade, and then the academy was 7th through 12th.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
So after a couple of years, well, the first thing we did was I think we were the first preschool, licensed preschool in the diocese. So we got that up and running, and then, or maybe it was kindergarten, I'm not sure, but it was the first licensed one. And then we were able to establish the middle school, which we built using, Bishop Middy gave us some of their portables. And so the one summer over 2 summers we built, and as the kids graduated from 6th grade, so they went into a 7th grade, not at the academy, but at the thing.
Their
so
own
that
school.
so that we were able to, in fact, have almost a full house of high school students at the academy, close to 400 students, which would have been the maximum we could accommodate. So it was a very exciting time to do that, and we went from a single elementary school to a double middle school, which was fantastic.
Sure.
Which really then was just made it. I think the environment was much healthier for middle school students to be with middle school students and not with high school students.
Yeah, definitely.
So that was a challenge, but we pulled it off, and it was
imagine.
quite successful.
Yes.
Yeah, so
It was a busy place.
it was very busy, very busy. Well, like St. Simon's is a very busy
place. Yeah.
What parish isn't busy?
Exactly.
Well, hang on. That glorious year at St. Anthony's was sheer bliss.
We'll get to that in a moment.
Okay.
Well, you did a wonderful thing in 1997 when you invited the Institute for Leadership and Ministry, which was just beginning, to be housed at St. Lawrence.
In fact, the very first gathering was in the backyard.
In the rectory
The
backyard.
rectory backyard. I think there was some glitches to the space being available, and we had to compromise and come up with, and so it was.
But it was perfect.
And it worked out perfectly. I remember that Bishop Domain was there, I believe, and I think Pat Mitchell was there as well.
Right. And there were like 60 in that first, 60 in the English speaking, and I think there were like 30 in the Spanish speaking.
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
So part, because we changed, when we built the middle school and tried to become the education center, it just seemed right that we could also use the facility for ongoing education for lay formation and lay leadership. So that was part of the motive anyway at the time. And I think ILM was there for probably, was it 8 years?
Oh, at least, because I came in 98, and yes, at least 8, maybe 10.
Could have been, yeah.
I think it was a good 10 years, yeah, because, yes, I'm pretty sure that's true, yeah. No, we always felt incredibly welcomed. That was quite wonderful.
I also thought that its location was convenient because of the diocese, the way the geographic...
pretty much in the middle.
Yeah, so I thought, it was quite convenient. Enough freeways to get you there.
Exactly.
And highways and byways.
Byways, exactly. And surface streets and all the rest of it, yeah. Yeah, no, and you did send some of your own parishioners also, too.
I did. I think I've had someone at the Institute for Leadership almost maybe 1 or 2 years I haven't had a graduate, but I think I've almost
I think
always
you
had
have
somebody
too,
at the
yeah.
Institute.
No, you have been incredibly supportive of the Institute.
Well,
It's just,
and most folk that go through it really, really, really love the experience.
yeah. It is unique. It is really, it's just one of the jewels, I think, of the diocese. And I'm so happy the way it's continued, because I retired in 2010, so it's been 7 years, but my successor is just carrying on and making some wonderful decisions. It's just, it's quite wonderful. So after you left St. Lawrence, you had that
Well,
glorious...
remember, I just got to get a little something in here. 13 of the 14 years at St. Lawrence, I was living with the founding pastor.
That's right.
Victor Wilkemeyer.
Yes.
And we had a very different understanding of ecclesiology, a very different understanding of church. So they weren't the easiest of years.
No. You also did a major remodeling.
We did. Well, that was partly because we also had to do some remodeling because of seismic work.
I know, but you did a fabulous job with that church.
Thank you, Anne. I'll take all the kudos I can get. It is a lovely church.
It is. It's a lovely church, exactly.
So, and then yes, from St. Lawrence, 14 years, I felt the folk needed something new, and.
So who succeeded you?
Andy Leggott.
Ah, okay.
Father Andy Leggott was my successor.
And you went to...
I was...
Almaden.
Interesting story I wanted to be told. I had to work with 2 transition teams.
Oh.
St. Nicholas and St. Joseph of Cupertino. And I spent 6 months working with those transition teams. And I wrote to the personnel board and said I'd go to either one, but my preference would be to go to St. Nicholas. I felt that I had lived with an emeritus for long enough, and God bless Joe, fantastic priest that he is, Joe Milani. I figured that I didn't need to have another emeritus on my back, you see. So, and then I remember Willie was the vicar for clergy at the time, and he called me and he said, Warwick, I need to come and see you. And I said, sure. He said, we came in and he said, you probably should sit down. I said, yes. And he said, the bishop's appointed you to St. Anthony's in Almaden. Wow. Okay. What brought that on? I had no idea about, how I've never worked on the clergy personnel board, so no idea what they think, when they think, and how they work things out. So I did. I went to St. Anthony's, and I remember I was there July, and I think the following May, I got a call from Tony Mancuso from St. Simon's, who said to me that he'd be asked to be moved from St. Simon's, and that he was recommending that I should come to St. Simon. So I said to him, Tony, the personnel board are going to do what the personnel board are going to do. I'm not looking for it. I'm perfectly happy here, etc. And well, I think 5 days later, I got a letter from the bishop appointing me as the pastor of St. Simon Parish. And it's been I've been here for 11 years now. And they've been good years. I say to people, I think I'm the most blessed pastor in the diocese because of the community I'm serving. And everywhere I've been, they've been great communities, but somehow St. Simon has been, I've been enriched by this community because of who they are. And what I mean by that is they are very well educated and also very resourceful group of people, and more than just financially, but and I think certainly my predecessor Tony and his predecessor Monsignor Andre were able to once again get the turf ready for leadership that I guess was felt was needed, but also willing to embrace an ecclesiology that works for me, that is very much, very much a Vatican II ecclesiology. So the folk were ready to embrace it. And a couple of years after getting here, back to one of the first things I had to do was the Diocesan Capital Campaign. I came in July, I beg your pardon, and by December we launched the Capital Campaign. So the first thing I had to do was go and ask people for money.
I'm your new pastor and I need money.
How to win friends and influence people. And we had a very successful campaign because we did a combined campaign, a matching campaign, 1.83 for the diocese, 1.83 for the parish, and we were successful in getting that done. But it did,
That capital campaign was very successful.
Absolutely, sure.
So you kind of alluded to it, but tell me some of the joys of priestly ministry.
Some of the joys of priestly ministry. Well, Anne, my favorite thing is the Eucharist. I think if it were not for Eucharist, for presiding at Eucharist, I probably wouldn't have lasted in the priesthood. For what reason, I don't know. It does nourish me completely. Now, I still find it challenging after 37 years of priesthood to deliver a homily.
Well, you're a very good homilist.
Thank you. People say that, but because we do it every day, every day. So that's still a challenge for me. But if I were to say the joys of priesthood, the people of God, really, because you're there constantly at their critical moments and at their celebrations, which is great.
And they share their lives with you.
And they share their lives with us,
Yeah, that is really. What are some
of course, you have some parishioners that can be very challenging.
Oh, of course.
Because they have a totally different ecclesiology and want a totally different leader. And they're not, which is great, because those are some of the challenges.
Sure. What are some of the,
I think one of the biggest challenges for me in the Diocese of San Jose is I think too many, maybe clergy as well and laity, have forgotten that we had a Vatican Council, or too many have never even heard about it.
Yeah.
And when you think of the pastoral theology, when you think of the ecclesiology, when you think of the spirituality and the dynamic council that it was, and we haven't even begun to touch the surface in some of the documents, really and truly. And that's a great sadness to me. So one of the challenges, especially because I guess I was thrust into high office early when I came into the diocese, being a pastor very soon after I got here.
You was very soon.
I've worked with a number of parochial vicars, and a good number, that hasn't been always, that's been great, it's been challenging, it's been enriching because of the diversity in the diocese, which is another one I think of its strengths, but it's also one of the challenges.
Sure.
But more than that, I'd like us to have a little more of a commonality in terms of what churches and what ecclesiology we should have. That would be a joy to me. Now, I'm not saying everybody should have mine.
No, I understand.
I'm willing to meet. I'd be willing to meet halfway, but not all the way. So I think those would be some of the challenges, but the great joys so far in diocese.
Well, you have been, from the beginning, a real supporter of lay ministry in the diocese. I can remember you're asking qualified lay people to preach whenever it was possible, whether it was penance services or Good Friday. Now, how did that just evolved, I'm assuming, out of your whole theology?
I would say that together with the woman, I used to call them the woman in sensible shoes.
Oh, yes.
God rest her soul.
And Sister Anne-Marie Mongovan.
Sister Anne-Marie Mongovan, who just died recently, and Sister Rita Claire
Dorner. Oh, mercy.
I think they had some influence, and then I did have a sort of a part-time sabbatical And I went to Washington Theological Union, and another woman religious, Teresa Kernke, was great, I'd say great influence in terms of letting me flourish in what I believed the church should be in terms of the people of God, the body of Christ, and all that sort of stuff. But even before, I think Dennis Hurley, again, huge influence.
Oh, sure.
And I remember we used to do what was called an adapted version of the third rite of reconciliation. And so that kind of lent itself to having lay presiders, because we didn't have to preside at the celebration. Obviously, we functioned as confessors. And so it just seemed to me a natural thing. If you want lay people to lead, and that the church calls us to let that happen, why wouldn't you? And so that's how it happened.
Well, I was privileged to be one, and it was just a humbling experience in the best sense of the word.
Interesting that, Fragamini just recently gave us a talk, Richard Fragamini,
oh, yes.
Is that his name? He was saying we really do need to revisit that third rite of reconciliation.
Oh, definitely.
We did kind of an adapted between the first and third, or the second and third, so that people would begin together, end together, and the absolution was the only thing that was not general. It was to those who had celebrated the sacrament. We prayed it together, rather than each individual being, because it can be, even with 10 priests, it can be a long celebration.
A long celebration.
People, it keeps people for hours. And anyway, it was one of the innovations I brought to the diocese, and of course I got away with it for a few years, as I did with the Easter Vigil. If you remember, I used to start with the Liturgy of the Word, then to go to the Liturgy of Light, and we did that for a good number of years until I got in trouble for that. One of the challenges, you're talking liturgy, the Roman Missal, the New Roman Missal, is a huge challenge, especially to something that was meant to nourish me, or was not meant to, I want to nourish me. The theology in there is a little skew. Yeah. The syntax,
and you are not the only priest who has said that.
The syntax is skewed.
Oh, it's so difficult to pray it.
When did we start meriting anything in our Catholic theology? Seriously?
No, we
Nearly
can't.
all the prayers we merit. Well, we do a little bit of editing when we're praying.
Thank heavens. Yeah. And my understanding is that Jesus came for all.
He did, and so I'll
not
say
the many. But that's the larger church. There's not much we can do about that. But that was a blow when that.
Now I read something recently that the Holy Fathers said something about the Reform.
Oh.
I think just this last week.
That'd be wonderful.
I can't remember. And I thought I think it came from the Germans, that they want another translation.
Well, I know the German bishops have been in the forefront.
Sure. Yes, and I think, I'm not sure, there's some other, we'll get on the bandwagon.
Right.
Please God, before I die. Well, Dennis Hurley was the chair to ISIL for many years, and so obviously the passion was there, ingrained in me. So
sure, it's all part of your formation. Absolutely. So tell me, what kind of, what differences do you see in your coming to the diocese and some of our more recent different? I mean, the diocese has changed.
Oh God, yes.
Just in terms of
well, what difference do I see? I think it's become much more diverse. Certainly in terms of clergy, we have a good number of. In fact, I think we foreigners are probably in the majority.
I would
of the
imagine
diocese by significant numbers. I didn't experience the kind of Tom Daly, I think, gave it the name, Bishop Tom Daly gave it the name tribalism. I didn't experience that when I first came to the diocese, but it grew, I suppose, to the point that I suppose it deserved a label. And I'm not sure that was the right label to give it, but it was given a label. But certainly I understand that the ethnic groups need to get together and enjoy getting together.
It's finding
so
the
that's
balance.
been, trying to find a balance. And as we've just had our last clergy study week was to see ways in which maybe we're able to be a more cohesive group of clergy serving the community in the diocese. I don't know how that's going to happen, but one day at a time.
One day at a time.
And of course, we've had a change in leadership, several changes in leadership in the diocese since I've been here. Obviously, with the second bishop, Bishop McGrath. We're very lucky to have Bishop McGrath.
We've had 2 wonderful bishops.
I've been blessed to have 3 extraordinary bishops, actually.
Yes. And we pray for the 3rd Bishop of San Jose.
Yes.
Also.
Yeah. It would be very helpful if we got the ilk of the ones I've already served.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Very different in their ways, I can say. I mean.
Oh my, yes, yes. And they will be the first to admit it.
Yes.
So, other things we should be talking about, just in terms of our history.
Well, where are we going? I know there's this whole evangelization thing. Not sure how that's going to pan out. Have we not been evangelizing all these years? Maybe not in the way that evangelization is supposed to take place, or is it we're supposedly to do it now? I don't know. When weren't we evangelizing?
Well, I think we've always been evangelizing. I just wonder if we're not, I don't want to say intentionalizing, because the intention has always been to evangelize, but somehow to organize it. I'm not sure either. And as I say, I've been out of the diocesan offices for 7 years, so I'm not sure what.
Sure.
But yeah, I think that will be a challenge for the future. I suspect our seminarians now being at Mundelein, that will make a difference.
Well, that was something that I guess was not expected at all.
No, not a bit.
But not surprising to me, again. I think the bishop made the right decision.
I think they will have experiences, good experiences that just were not possible at St. Patrick's.
Correct,
just the part of the country, the number of students. I understand there's like 300 students at Mundelein.
I would imagine.
And including some lay students on the weekends. So I'm kind of excited for them. I think once they get used to the snow.
Well, I feel sorry for the guys, because I mean they're away from California.
Yeah.
But,
So, well, we have been blessed.
the other big change in the diocese was the Diaconate.
Yes, that's true.
That was new. We didn't have it we did have some, but
we didn't have a formation program.
we didn't have a formation program, and I don't think it was a vocation that was encouraged by the leadership at the time. Part of me agreed with that.
But our deacons are doing some wonderful work.
They are.
Yeah, especially
because the formation has been good.
Well, and you were also involved in the formation. Yeah. In fact, that formation really was a diocesan event. We drew from across the diocese for the Saturday sessions and the practicum. So we can feel very good about that.
How to preside at baptisms and at weddings.
Exactly. Right. This is what you do, and this is what you don't do. Well, I am so grateful to you, Father Warwick, for taking the time and hosting us here at St. Simon, and very grateful for your contributions to the history of the Diocese of San Jose.
Thank you, Anne.
May they continue.
Just for a few more years,
years.
It'd be nice to retire. Just ask Father Leger about retirement.
But we're working.
Yes, but you don't have the administrative
This is
responsibility.
true. No, when we're in charge of the schedule is not in charge of us. I think that's the main thing.
Yeah.
So thank you again.